Hey everyone, I'm Mike Watson, and I'm here with Adam Ray Atkins, my regular co-host on the Acid Left, and the Blockchain Socialist, which is a podcast, or he's a host of a podcast, and also he has experience of working in the field of the blockchain. So we're basically going to talk about red blockchain, red blockchainism, red crypto. Is there such a thing? And just what is the blockchain? Can it be good? I don't know. Basically, just everything around crypto on the left. Is it something useful for us? So there's this very interesting article just come out called, it's written up here, "Fascism on the Blockchain: The Work of Art in the Age of NFTs," which is about obviously NFTs, these non-fungible tokens, which everyone's talking about lately, which basically are digital artworks, digital images, videos, etc., that are proven to be like the original, or that one can prove their provenance. And this is based on blockchain technology. So that all kind of depends on knowing what a blockchain is in the first place. Actually, that would be a good thing. Can you say a little bit more about yourself, and also just explain to us what an NFT is, Blockchain Socialist?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me. So a quick introduction about me is that I don't actually, first of all, look like this guy in the the avatar with the green sweater, but I I have been working in the blockchain space now for a few years, and I got interested in cryptocurrencies and blockchain a long time ago, back in 2016, I believe it was. And for a long time, I was kind of frustrated and a bit annoyed that there wasn't very good left-wing analysis of the blockchain space, of cryptocurrencies. I felt it was lacking. And whenever you wanted to look up anything remotely about blockchain or cryptocurrency, you get bombarded by a barrage of just like a lot of right-wing trash. It's a lot of right-wing ideology that is packaged with anything related to cryptocurrencies and blockchain. All the like biggest books are written by people who are explicitly very right-wing libertarians, and have very conservative views when it comes to economics and other types of issues, not even just economic but also social ones sometimes as well, even though they call themselves libertarian. But so I was frustrated for a long time, and I was working in the space, so I had a fairly decent grasp about the technology, and I felt like I was a decently well-read socialist. So I thought, why don't I try to synthesize the two things that I knew a bit about and see what comes of it. And so I started off making a subreddit called r/crypto leftists, just as a way to first create some sort of community of people who maybe were thinking similarly, because at the time, I mean, there really was no such thing as any sort of like explicitly left-wing type of movement or person or group of people, at least on the internet, that was exploring this stuff. So I felt the need that there needed to be a place where to talk about this first off, because there wasn't even that. And then I started a blog. So I just wrote articles. I tried to publish once a week, just with a lot of my thoughts on synthesizing these two things. And then now I've just sort of transitioned more into podcasts. So Mike was on my podcast not too long ago, and we talked a lot about memes, of course. And so, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great podcast. It's a great podcast and resource, because I think a lot of people are thinking about blockchain right now, and maybe there's some misunderstanding of what it is or why it should be important. And then I think one of the things that's kind of been thrown in there just recently, along with the kind of hysteria that accompanies blockchain technology, is these NFTs, which have applications to the art world, because they're ways of like accrediting a digital artwork as the original, shall we say. So yeah, I don't know, but why can blockchain do that? What is it about an NFT that relates to crypto? Can you just explain that or help me with that a bit?
Yeah, sure. So NFT is this short for non-fungible token. And yeah, in the past couple of weeks, it's like everybody has some sort of hot take on NFTs. It's pretty wild, and a lot of people on the left, and I think unfortunately, don't have a proper understanding necessarily of everything that's going on. So sometimes they get some things a bit off. There are some legitimate criticisms of it, of course, there always is, but they sort of missed, I think, the whole picture. But what is special about a blockchain and why it can make something like an NFT, to explain that sort of requires an explanation of a lot of layers of different things that it can do to lead up to NFT. So to get into an NFT, you're talking about, at least 3 different layers of like maybe somewhat complex ideas until you get to that. So then it becomes a very difficult
Okay, yeah.
conversation to have.
Let's maybe give the kind of layman's the layman's
So I
breakdowns. I'm just thinking about what might work for the viewer, or maybe I'm using the viewer as kind of to hide my own ignorance here. But yeah, just to the kind of simple take.
Yeah, sure. I'll try my best. So I apologize if I botch it or if it's still a little bit confusing for people. But basically, what is special about a blockchain is that it keeps track of unique digital assets. So the first use case of blockchain was Bitcoin, and it was able to keep track of the movement of Bitcoin between different accounts. Right. Before Bitcoin, this was impossible to do without any sort of central authority or third party to make sure that so that they can clear transactions between people. So the particularities about blockchain is that it can do accounting, but without needing a third party, without needing a central entity. So like it became very popular with people who had sort of like anti-government sentiment, anti-establishment, very negative feelings about the banks, especially in the outcome of the 2008 financial crash. So it was able to do that. After Bitcoin, which is a quite simplistic system, to be honest, although it sort of like it uses some complex mathematics. It's overall quite simple compared to what we have now and when we get to NFTs. So other protocols besides Bitcoin, one in particular called Ethereum, was able to develop what's called smart contracts. So with a blockchain, with Bitcoin, or also on the Ethereum blockchain with Ether, it's cryptocurrency, you are able to digitally move assets from one place to another, right? And you don't need a third party, and you're using it all through computers over the internet. So what that means on top of that is you're able to make the money or the cryptocurrency that's on top of these networks do things based on predetermined criteria. So like in programming language, it would be like an if-then statement. So like if X happens, then move, my Ether from me to someone else. So like if me and Mike have a bet that tomorrow is going to be sunny or something like that, you can say if tomorrow is sunny, then send 5 Ether to Mike. You're able to do this type of coordination through the use of smart contracts with money or with the cryptocurrency. Yeah.
TBS, can I ask a clarifying question there? Because that's something that I see said a lot. But what determines if the bet criteria or if was met, if not a third party?
Right. So that's a good question. So you have to distinguish data that is on chain or data that's being kept track on the blockchain and data that's being kept track off of the blockchain. So in the case of weather, the weather is not being recorded on the blockchain at all. Like it's not something that's really happening. This is called the oracle problem. So an oracle is something that is taking data from somewhere else and then putting it onto the blockchain. So basically, you're using what's called an API. You're making a call using the contract, saying call this contract, which is an oracle. That oracle then sends an API to weather.com or whatever meteorology site, sends you back the data of like whether or not it is sunny or raining outside, and then you're able to complete that smart contract. So there are definitely like dependencies in this type of network. Like people will say, you know, it's a trustless type of technology, but I think that's not really. It doesn't cover all the nuance at the very least. You know, there are some things where.
Yeah, for me, the real innovation is that. I mean, what blockchain does in terms of money is it means that you can kind of certify a given unit of money as really being officially like Bitcoin without having a bank there. Yeah. So you have these computers that are all kind of certifying together, you know, as part of a pool. They certify a given kind of unit as of Bitcoin as being, you know, that actual unit. But this is where you get rid of the expert, you get rid of the middleman being the banker.
Yeah.
And that's where NFT comes in, non-fungible token. It's a unique kind of crypto coin. So it's not like one of many Bitcoins that you certify it as being officially one of the kind of, should we say, X thousand or billion Bitcoins. It's rather a singular kind of unit of currency that is not repeated. Okay, so if you have a meme and you want to kind of claim yourself as the maker of that meme, which would be, you know, deeply contrary to meme culture, but just supposing you wanted to kind of claim yourself as the originator of a meme, you could link that to Ethereum. I think it's Ethereum that's used, isn't it? And you could prove that as the original. Then you could potentially sell it, and there'd be no confusion between that and copies. So this gets interesting for art collectors, because then, you know, there's an answer to that question: how can you buy and sell digital art? Because how can you prove that you have the, you know, the original artwork? And this is the answer. But what interests me is not that you can now verify a JPEG as being the first or the kind of valuable single JPEG of its kind. It's more that you get rid of the art expert that would otherwise validate it. You don't need the art expert anymore. It's being validated by the blockchain. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, that's kind of true. What I sort of described it as once as like the like who would do the forensics of the art in like normal, in a painting. Basically, that person becomes, they are the blockchain. Like they are removed from the entire process because the forensics is done just inherently.
The blockchain takes over. So this is where it gets kind of democratic, or where there's this kind of potential. This is what this article talks about that I have up here by Jonathan Bella. So it's kind of weird because it mirrors very closely an argument I made about Walter Benjamin and Twitch streaming, which is actually now part of my next book, which but you can find the essay or in one version of it online. I think in the magazine Aeon. I'll put a link beneath the video. But basically, Walter Benjamin said in the 1930s that that mass-produced art, like magazines, postcards, posters, biscuit tins, they make art accessible to many, many people, but they kind of get rid of art's aura. So this is kind of a side argument. It's normally taken as a main argument in this essay, the work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction. But the main argument there is that the mass reproduction of art gives the working class a hunger for property and for riches. So suddenly they're seeing all these images everywhere, which generally are pretty lavish, like the Mona Lisa, perhaps one of the less lavish examples, but, you know, artworks that depict wealthy, elegant seeming people, that depict wealth itself, objects, etc. So people in seeing all this stuff, also in film and on maybe hearing about stuff on radio, in books, whatever, start to want more stuff. So how the fascists in Italy and Germany reacted was to start to divert people's attention from all the kind of the stuff they were seeing that they now wanted, because they suddenly had access to way more art as such. They distracted people from this through military parades, through scapegoating of minorities, and through saying, hey, wouldn't you like some kind of adventure taking over parts of Eastern Europe or Africa, etc. This was basically a kind of misappropriation of mass media. So you use it rather than giving everyone the opportunity to become a film star, which is kind of the suggestion of mass media. You can all be artists, you can all have this stuff, you can all be subjects of this stuff. Rather than allowing that to happen, the elite rather use the mass media to distract people so that people wouldn't want to kind of dismantle the existing kind of relations of property, that being capitalist relations of property. What the guy is saying here, Jonathan Bella, and what I talked about in relation to Twitch and memes, is that we again have this new tech that could be used democratically, and in his case cryptocurrency and NFTs. But rather than people saying that, hey, now anyone can kind of certify themselves as the original artist, which kind of in a way brings about a situation in which anyone can be an artist, which is something that kind of gets said in relation to different technologies. Is rather than this happening, NFTs are basically being used to create a new class of artworks that are linked to crypto investments, etc. So you don't get everyone now making NFTs out of their memes and us all potentially becoming rich, or rather just all becoming kind of on an equal plane. You get things like Grimes selling some NFTs for $5 million recently. Grimes being the partner of Elon Musk, as we talked about on the Blockchain Socialist podcast. So you're basically talking a technology with potential to democratize ownership being used for quite the opposite. And I think this is what we're seeing with crypto generally, and where it gets tricky to talk about a socialist cryptocurrency, because I think people do kind of say, hey, well, we can kind of get rid of the bankers, therefore, we can make a utopia, we can all have money. That's seeming increasingly unlikely as a direction of crypto, because it's just being used as an investment token, like currency itself, like official currencies, or rather, state-sanctioned currencies. The only difference being that the rise and fall, the kind of peaks and troughs of crypto, are much faster than with you're giving a term limit, probably a national currency, whatever you call these.
The fiat.
Yes, well, rather than with fiat. Thank you. Okay, that's a load of things thrown at you, but that's kind of, I think, what's really important in terms of the notion of a left crypto, is that whatever crypto can do, and that is really enable people to credit things as valid, as the original, etc., as as real currency or whatever. Whatever that potential is has actually been kind of supplanted with just a kind of quite opportunistic way of making lots of money, and it doesn't offer poorer people very much. So how do you think we might get around that? What are the left-wing applications still of crypto, and how might we kind of take it back from investors?
So there's a lot there, but what I would first say is that the way I like to look at it from what is the use case for blockchain or crypto for the left, is to first split it up into time. So you have things that we can do right now that would be useful and expedient right now, and then there are things that we can do at some later date once different material conditions have been met. I think that's like an important distinction that sometimes gets lost. The point is never that blockchain is going to make socialism, or cryptocurrency is going to make socialism, because I'm not a techno-determinist. But so I think the most clear things that right now is potentially useful for the left is to think about the examples of WikiLeaks and Sci-Hub, if you know those. So WikiLeaks, if you remember, back in the day, they were they were not allowed to get access into any of their bank accounts because they were under scrutiny from various governments. So they couldn't access any of their money. But luckily, before that happened, they had been accepting Bitcoin. And so because of the fact that they accepted Bitcoin, they had access to capital and they were able to use it. And I would argue is probably one of the only reasons why like Julian Assange still is maybe alive, or like, you know, has somewhat of a chance and still has lawyers and has like a decent defense. Although, you know, of course, the machinations of the state is doing all it can. And then there with Sci-Hub is actually, if you don't know, it's like it's a website where you can access any single or the vast majority of scientifically published articles that are behind a paywall, like Elsevier or like any of those really big scientific publishing journals. You have to pay like quite a lot of money, and this is for papers that were published or funded, research that was funded through public money. So like you paid like through your tax money for this scientist to do such work, but then there is a paywall put up by a private company for all this research. But so there's a woman based in, I believe, either Russia or Georgia. She's a hardcore communist. Like she has her one of her talks was titled like "Why Communism is Science." So she's a really interesting woman, but she's like a PhD student in neuroscience somewhere over there, and she made this website and basically makes this freely available to everyone, so anybody can have access to any of the research that's behind any sort of paywall. And she only accepts Bitcoin, or I think she's trying to expand to other cryptocurrencies. But yeah, she's directly challenging state power and capitalist power, I would say. So in situations where if the left were to like, you know, take things seriously, ratchet up a notch, where you are actually challenging real institutions, then like we just have to consider the fact that, you know, we live in a society, a capitalist one, and we're going to need, you know, access to capital, and that's going to be necessary to pay people, to pay for things, to pay for, you know, you never know what else. So a very easy thing to do is just to have cryptocurrency, just because you are planning to challenge real power, and one of the first things that they're going to do is prevent access to your bank accounts. As soon as Joe Biden says all Antifa-related organizations are illegal or something like that, you know, DSA can no longer access their Wells Fargo account, then like, you know, they're pretty screwed. Like it's
yeah. So that's kind of like it's a tool to help the vanguard in a sense.
In a sense,
So
yeah.
you're not changing capitalism, but you're helping people who are challenging capitalism in their activity. But you're not even expecting those people maybe to, you know, they're not drinking Coca-Cola or something, you know, but they're going to use the Bitcoin to go about their business in, you know, in trying to make a better world. But we're not imagining that the Bitcoin is actually changing the conditions of capitalism.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it would be, to clarify, impossible for a government agency to stop someone's access to their crypto wallet.
I wouldn't say it's not impossible, because I mean, if the government just like assassinates everyone, then yeah, you know, you don't have access. If they kill the person who has access to the private keys, you know, there's a lot of like, the devil's in the details, of course, you know, how you secure the private keys that has access to your actual Bitcoin is like very important, and, you know, is probably something that a bad actor would want to figure out in order to prevent you. I'm like, I think it's very difficult from a technical standpoint to stop if you have access to like the internet. They could, you know, somehow find your computer, infect it with a particular virus. They're able to like, you know, webcam into your screen, and then they can like see your private key or something like that you showed on your screen once. You know, there are obvious, like there are a lot of very, you know, very well known attacks that are like not blockchain related that actually would stop you. There wouldn't be an attack. Well, it would be a lot more difficult to attack the actual blockchain itself. I will say, however, because there is this recent like narrative with a lot of big accounts, big left-wing accounts on Twitter, especially, that I've just noticed, that like say, you know, we like Bitcoin should not exist, or like cryptocurrency, all of it should just not exist. You know, it's sort of like a blanket. None of this should exist, without, of course, any sort of like realistic plan on how to do that. Or it mostly comes from an ideological point of view. But so, like, if you actually want Bitcoin to not exist, I would say you should encourage communist organizations to adopt Bitcoin, because then the government will take it seriously and like try to actually take it, like maybe actually try to take it down. You know, that's maybe one counterpoint I'll say to that. But so to get back to the use cases. So there's this one very simple, like obvious, I think, thing that we can do now. There's also more slightly advanced things that we can do now that are a bit more experimental, which are things that like I'm working on. Like you can, you know, if you have a political organization that, you know, organizes digitally, and wants to like hold votes on how you want to move funds from one place to another, and you're talking about a very large organization with a lot of people who don't know each other, who are presumably all left wing or have some sort of goal in mind, like you can use the blockchain as a coordination platform for the coordination of like different types of voting, different types of like fund distribution for particular goals. So that's another thing that you can do as well, that I think you can do today, but with a lot of like experimentation, and like it'll take some time to actually get to something that's probably very good. And then if you look like way into the future, I did publish an article once about how the blockchain could be used as a way to distribute housing within a socialist community. So basically, in short, like the blockchain would sort of serve as the mechanism in which it would keep track of your right to a house. So everyone would have a right to a house, which would be represented through a token. Everyone would have access to this token. Based on your particular demographics, you would have access to either, you know, a bigger house or a smaller house. So in the example I used, that we had Mario and Luigi. Mario is a single dad. So Mario, with his housing right token, he has access to a slightly bigger home with like another bedroom for his son, for baby Mario. And then Luigi, as a single guy, he has access only to like smaller housing. And so the blockchain would coordinate all of the supply of housing in a community and use the tokens to distribute, to like make your claim on what's available in terms of the supply. So in that way, I think it's sort of a mix of planning, like a mix of central planning, but it's done in a more democratic way, I think. So it's more of a democratic planning, I would argue, this example.
And it seems there to point to maybe the possibility of like of NFTs being, or at least the blockchain being used as some kind of labor token, you know, which Marx has talked about before. And like that seems like an interesting way, the way that you talk about the housing being linked to it, that you could do that with other commodities and not just housing, you know, that we find to be essential.
Yeah, but the labor tokens come in for Marx after the revolution as a means of phasing out money.
Yes. I guess I was meaning like in a future society.
Just to clarify, towards, because this is the problem we have at the moment, because it's just so much a coin, or rather a currency, or series of currencies that suggest themselves to libertarianism or anarchism rather than communism.
Yeah, I would maybe ask. Well, I would just bring up. There's also, besides like thinking about money in like a traditional sense, that I think we've largely been talking about it right now as like, you know, the way we use it today. There's also other types of monetary systems that I think are really interesting that haven't been explored very explicitly by the left very much, which is mutual credit systems. I think so. Mutual credit is a different type of monetary system where every person basically has the right to print money. So like everybody has the right to make the money printer go burr in a mutual credit system. You make promises to people. Like the way it views money is like as a promise. So there's a lot of very interesting writing about mutual credit, and I would recommend people to check it out as something else to think about. I think the labor vouchers are very interesting. I haven't seen very many good examples of labor vouchers like in history, but I have seen like practical examples of mutual credit systems being used. And what's also very interesting is that there are mutual credit projects being built on like the Ethereum blockchain, for example, or on other blockchains. So I recently did an interview with someone from a project called Circles UBI. So that Circles UBI is a very interesting project. It also uses a mutual credit system. And so because it's like built on a blockchain, it's considered a decentralized mutual credit system. So in most mutual credit systems, you have what's called a time bank or something like that. You have some sort of entity that sort of facilitates, that keeps track of all of the mutual credits that people have. But in the case of using a blockchain, you can create what's called a decentralized mutual credit system. But anyways, it's a very interesting project. They use decentralized, they use a mutual credit built on top of the blockchain to sort of provide a universal basic income to people who are part of the network. And in order to become a part of the network, you have to be trusted by 3 other people who are trusted in the network. So it's largely based in Berlin. So like different cooperatives in Berlin use it, different like small businesses and like, and yeah, different projects that are based in Berlin use the Circles mutual credit system to a small degree. So I would suggest checking that out maybe if you guys have time.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. Yeah. Sorry, carry on, Adam. I'm just going to change on to some of these memes we have.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I know someone too that works, or I don't know if they do anymore, but they were working for a startup in the States that was trying to link medical records with a blockchain as a way of getting around some stuff and allowing people to basically always have their medical records. And like you could go, let's say there was an emergency and you were brought into a hospital that you've never been interacted with before. You were on vacation or something, and all of your medical records would instantly be available to the people that would be working on you. Like, so they would know your history, know your allergies, etc. And I thought that was an interesting thing because it has nothing to do with currency. That the blockchain technology itself and its way of verifying information is actually really important for the increasing digital world.
Yeah, that's something that's called, that's sort of this idea around what's called self-sovereign identity. It's basically being able to, like, for the individual to have a right to their, I guess, identifying information so that they can choose who gets to see it and who doesn't. And so by being able to prove that, you are you, then you are able to keep track of like all the credentials related to you and say like, okay, I approve this person to look at my information, for example. So in the case of like healthcare data, that's something that's like, hotly being talked about in the blockchain world, in the enterprise blockchain world, I'll say.
Okay, I have some memes here just to get onto this. I'm just thinking that we could maybe go through each meme, just spending a short time on each one. I won't give a defined time, but I will. The opposite of slow memes. Slow memes being kind of an idea I'll talk about in my next book. But now I'm kind of like going back with the traditional fast memes. Because I'm thinking about how we can because we obviously have a limited time. We can go through a few of these, maybe just kind of talking about whatever is kind of thrown up, so to speak, by the meme. So this first one, I don't know if it's the one you gave me. I found a similar one maybe because I had to get the right res. There's many different versions of this. I don't know if this is the exact one you gave me, but anyway, it's about inflation and deflation and how this relates to crypto. So how does this relate? Presumably, what they're saying that sometimes inflation can be a good thing if you have crypto.
It's saying that it's basically equating inflation bad, deflation good, because this is an extremely popular meme in the Bitcoin community, and in the Bitcoin community there are a lot of gold bugs, especially in the beginning. There are a lot of people who really believed like going back to the gold standard was the way to go in terms of monetary policy. There's a long history of this, like after Nixon, I believe it was, who pushed America away from the gold standard, a bunch of people got very angry and said, no, we need to go back to the gold standard because like this is somehow keeps the government to account in terms of like printing money and like overspending its budget. The classic like treating the government as if it's like a household budget type of thing. But so like on the top you see, you have your $20 and then you have like a bunch of stuff that you can buy with $20. But then as you go like over time, you can buy less and less with your $20. And like this is like more or less true. Like things have gotten more expensive. Like prices have inflated. And it is, the purchasing power of $20 today is less than the purchasing power of $20, 10 years ago. And then on the bottom, you see like the explanation of a deflationary system is where if you have one Bitcoin, in the beginning, maybe you can only buy a couple of things, but like if you keep that one Bitcoin, then like eventually you'll be able to buy the entire supermarket. So like this is sort of like how Bitcoiners tried to critique like the current monetary system and like explain why the Bitcoin monetary system is better from this angle of inflation versus deflation.
Yeah, but with that, I just I think that it only works if you have a lot of money, because I mean, if you can afford to invest 1,000 in Bitcoin and hold,
exactly,
then you will see returns in a few years. In the arc of 2 years, you'll probably see returns. But if you only have a couple of hundred, then you're probably going to end up taking that out a lot quicker. I think a lot of people who invest probably, a lot of people who experiment with this stuff probably put in very little and end up taking it out so they can afford milk for their coffee or whatever, which is made very easy by the way you can buy and sell so easily on Coinbase, for example. Yeah. I'm not sure how quickly you can get your funds out now, but it is unfortunately a system that really favors people with money, because the way these go up and down, I mean, if you had a few thousand, you can make a few thousand in a day quite often. I mean, presumably that's the kind of aim now. There's a lot of people who invest all day, every day, and make money off it. Is that a strategy that you would just kind of like go for coins that are rapidly increasing, pump a few thousand in, take them out very quickly, and then keep doing that?
It's a strategy, but actually this particular meme is against that strategy. It's actually against trading.
Well, true.
It's actually it's discouraging trading.
Yeah, okay. But even then, I mean, they do want you to hold it. Yeah, I see that. But then I suppose that goes back to my original point, is that you can't really hold unless you already are rich.
Right. It's I mean, yeah, it's sort of like I mean, the whole the criticism of this is like incredibly simplistic and incredibly shallow. Like first off, inflation is like, it's like the goal of the Federal Reserve, at least in America, for like inflation at like 2% or something like that. It's quite low, and it also like it doesn't talk at all about just the stagnation of wages in the first place, where most people get their money. Like there's no mention of that. Like inflation wouldn't really matter if your wage was increasing at the exact same rate as inflation. Like it just like, who cares? If everything's jumping up 2%, but your purchasing power is going up 2%, doesn't matter. But that isn't happening, and that isn't what they like care to talk about. In a deflationary system, this type of system is deeply problematic for people who want to borrow money. So like a deflationary system increases the purchasing power of a single unit of money, of a thing. And so like in this situation, in the deflationary system, if I was loaned one Bitcoin in 2011, but I needed to pay off my loan in 2024, it would be near impossible for me to pay it off, because I would have to work just like 50x much more in order to earn one Bitcoin than I would have in 2011. It's like there are like very deep, but it's like this extremely simplistic type of comparison that they try to convince people to hold, because in the future you will be rich. Like it's sort of like this, I guess, Calvinistic ideal of don't spend your money, hold your investments, and then when you're old enough, like sell it and retire and, you know, live on a
Yeah,
farm.
although I think for me that's the opposite of Calvinism, because Calvinism is all about the work ethic. You know, but
I think
you need to
there's a
be
thin
working.
line between them, I think.
Well, I think there is something to be said. There is this kind of like conservative ethic around saving as
Yeah.
well. But I think a lot of the memes and the culture around Bitcoin are a bit like, you know, invest and do nothing and get money, or, you know, just keep turning over the money and doubling it. So it's generally about ways of like saving yourself from working. But it's obviously not very true. I mean, I think it must be really hard work to make money from constant investment and reinvestment. It makes me think of like playing League of Legends or something. I mean, it's really a grind. You know,
Well,
I
know a lot of people that do that are part of the crypto pump and dump people, and I mean, a lot of times they have bots or, you know, stuff set up to do it for them. So they're not doing that much, and then they hold seminars to get other people to kind of join in, and they get referral fees and stuff. You know, beyond that, so they get the extra cash in there. It's very popular, or it was 3 years ago or so in my city. These places were everywhere. A lot of like local businesses in my city actually accept Bitcoin, which is very interesting because I know it's not very common over the US. This meme strikes me, it's funny, I get it, but it strikes me as like 110% this person was screaming about Ron Paul before they made this.
Yes. Yes.
And you know, like what's the biggest example of deflation is like depressions, right? Like, you know, like the Great Depression in the US, like that was a huge moment of deflation, and it would be hard to argue that that's a good thing economically from like the capitalist standpoint, or from a
I
human
think you have to
standpoint.
like be American to understand the Ron Paul reference, but also to understand the meme, because I didn't know that was a complete Costco supermarket in the trolley there at the end. I thought it looks like a flat pack. It looks like you could only afford like a flat pack furniture, whereas before you could afford the whole supermarket. I thought it's like this was like IKEA, like this was like a cabinet from IKEA, and I was thinking, well, how come you could afford the whole supermarket, and now in 2024 you can only afford a cabinet from IKEA? You know, like I don't know if you have IKEA in America. You know, a piece of furniture. I thought it was a flat pack piece of furniture in the last trolley, so that confused me a lot. Because it's in fact it's a whole soup or a whole company or a whole branch.
This is definitely a very American.
It more made sense to me up to 2024, and I was like, why now? Are they just walking out with a flat pack kitchen cabinet or something? But now I get it. Okay.
So I feel like this is what you get, like in terms of, this is what you get whenever you look into inflation and deflation without a class understanding of the economy.
Right.
Yeah.
This is what you get.
That's
Ron
all very.
Paul.
I'm reading Capital now, and I don't want to get into it because now it's making me think, like, what does this really mean? Because I know capitalists often what they want to drive the prices down, because it drives the whole kind of the price of the basket of essential goods down, which then drives the wages down effectively. I don't know if this means anything to you. Possibly not. No, let's not get into Capital right now. But this is why I'm looking perplexed, because I'm trying to relate this to my reading of Capital at this moment. Okay, so that's interesting. So this HODL is it's kind of a meme, isn't it? It's because someone once wrote HODL or just hold it or something on. Was it on Reddit? And they miswrote it as HOD. Yeah, they miswrote hold as HODL. So now HODL is like.
Yeah, that's the story is that.
Yeah, go on.
The story is something like, I don't know, some Bitcoin forum. I think maybe it was before Reddit was even around. I don't know, but some Bitcoin forum, somebody like drunkenly posted about holding, like to hold your Bitcoin like for dear life or something, like you just like all you got to do is hold it, because he had made the mistake of trying to trade it and he lost money. And so the easiest way to make money is to not trade, is just to hold it. I think he said, or he just like admitted that he was a very bad trader. he was just like, I'm bad at this. Some of you guys are really good. I can't do this, so I'm just gonna hodl it. And then like at the end of this like really long post of him misspelling hold to hodl, he was like, sorry, but I've been drinking beers or something like that. So he was drunk apparently when he wrote the post, and it became a meme.
And this one relates back to the last one. It's this idea of holding it while you can. And you sent us an article that was really interesting, kind of talking about how there's this element of collapse that is kind of central to this theme of holding it, because you're holding it because you think it'll go higher. The value will go higher, which would probably be related to the value of current economic systems collapsing. So you're like, it's almost like a lazy doomsday prepper, because you somehow believe that with collapse there will still be enough functioning for
the internet.
The internet and that kind of stuff. But currencies, the dollar, or any other world currency will be gone. I thought that was an interesting angle to take to it, and it really does make a lot of sense. And I have to say, the small amount of cryptocurrency that I've held for a few years, that's exactly what I did. I bought some, and I have not looked at it since. And I'm like, well, who knows? Maybe if things go bad, I'll have a couple dollars that I can not die.
Yeah. Your apocalypse money, just in case.
Yeah, in case I want to buy something nice after the world ends.
But it is basically like, it is a bit like a giant game of chicken. It is just like, who's gonna get rid of it at the end? Who's gonna do it? Like, you're just sort of like all in a circle looking at your friends. Who's gonna do it? Except at a mass scale.
But when Bitcoin plummeted like 2 or 3 years ago, everything plummeted pretty much. I mean, all crypto. Why was that? There wasn't a general plummeting in fear, was there? I don't think. It just sort of came unexpectedly over one kind of Christmas. It was going up and up and up, and then just suddenly dropped. And it's kind of interesting that then all the media was saying, don't buy Bitcoin, it's obviously a scam. And it would have been the perfect time to buy it when it reached its lowest point, obviously. But I'll buy if it drops, really plummets again. I would try it. But the thing is, when it plummets now, it's like last time it plummeted, it went down to like 3,000. So it's not even plummeting so low that it's that easy to buy unless you already have some money. Obviously.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't. I'm no investor, but I wouldn't like think of it so much like you don't have to buy one whole Bitcoin, right? You can buy.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
There's like 8 decimal points or whatever you can go down to with a Bitcoin, and there's 16 decimal points for Ether. So yeah, I mean,
but I don't think anyone can realistically imagine £100 of Bitcoin, $100 or euros of Bitcoin ever being worth that much. And if it was, I mean, come on, because the people who had one whole Bitcoin in comparison would just be so enormously rich if your 100 ended up becoming worth a lot. It doesn't really work. It don't make any sense.
Yeah.
You're obviously going to have some sizable amount for it ever to be worth anything, I think.
Well, and that's the article that I referenced earlier. That's kind of
something in relation to
Bitcoin.
I mean, only because one is worth so much. That means that a few quid in Bitcoin can never be worth that much. With new or less valuable crypto, obviously it is possible, and then you end up kind of working out, you trying to guess which one you can invest just a few euros in and then become a millionaire. But you're never going to know which one, I guess. And there doesn't necessarily have to be another one. I mean, do you really think there's going to be another one that does what Bitcoin's done?
Well, I think the cryptocurrency markets are largely driven by narrative, right? In the like traditional stock market, like I would argue that like a lot of the qualities of cryptocurrency is very similar qualities to the stock market anyways. But in particular with cryptocurrencies, and more so, I think, with particular stocks like Tesla and like these other ones, it is largely driven by narrative and like what is the story behind this particular project and this particular coin. Like the story and narrative behind Bitcoin is like he's like, you know, the grandpa, he's like the father who like is always going to be there, the reliable one, the like he's the gold to everyone else is like silver or like other
Yeah,
metals.
yeah. I mean,
Like
I get that, and but I suppose narrative is has something to do with value always to some degree. But you know,
yeah.
fear are so trusted, you know, that they don't fluctuate as much. Don't have also the potential to suddenly rise in a way that cryptos can. But given that kind of narrative, it does follow that Dogecoin could become really big. Now, I know you think it's a joke currency, and in fact, it was a joke currency when it started. But, you know, with the whole thing of Elon Musk talking about going to the moon and using it, and with going to the moon being a kind of crypto meme anyway, or the idea of going to the moon. So he's talking about going to Mars, but going to the moon, going to Mars being kind of crypto talk anyway for like the currency rising exponentially. You can just imagine it catching on. I mean, it already is kind of rising on the basis of Elon Musk's involvement. Although I know it went kind of up towards the dollar and then has gone back down, but it's going back up again. But do you not think it could, based on its links with Elon Musk, kind of be the next Bitcoin?
I don't know. I mean, we would live in like the dumbest world possible if that did happen. Like even dumber than like
we do clearly
yeah.
do we not live in the dumbest world possible? And it because memes are such a big thing, and it comes from a meme. I've got a feeling it really could. I mean, Ethereum's never really getting where people think it, you know, it potentially was going to go.
I think
it's getting kind of boring watching
Ethereum has been growing in value more than Bitcoin has lately.
Oh, okay.
Because of various reasons. But I mean, the problem with maybe Dogecoin is its like actual technical properties. As far as I understand, I don't know that much about the technical properties of Dogecoin, but I'm almost certain that it's a lot less secure than Bitcoin is. So like Bitcoin, it is extremely expensive at this point. Like you have to have the power of the sun essentially to be able to like really, really disrupt Bitcoin from a base layer perspective, like to perform what's called a 51% attack. So Bitcoin is done by mining, right? And they use a lot of energy in order to mine a block of Bitcoin. Of the total energy that's being expended, if you are able to expend over 51% of the rest of the of like the whole pool, then you are able to potentially reverse transactions. That's something that's extremely difficult to do with Bitcoin at this point because of the energy expenditure. With Dogecoin, I know that it definitely uses a different system, probably. And so it is probably a lot cheaper to do some sort of like base layer attack to Dogecoin. So like just from that perspective, it is very unlikely. And as well, the narrative behind Bitcoin is that it's a deflationary currency, which is highly valued by these like crypto speculators. But Dogecoin, I'm pretty sure, is not deflationary. It's literally the same. I think it's the same amount of Dogecoin is created every block. So 10,000 Dogecoin is made, I think, every block that is mined on the Dogecoin network. Don't quote me on that, but it's something like that. So it's actually, I think it's quite inflationary the way it's built.
Okay, good. So this keep calm and stack sat. Sat is like the lowest denomination or division of a Bitcoin. Is that right?
Yeah. So
the smallest denomination of a Bitcoin. That means just like, it's kind of advice to a rookie investor, no? So basically, just buy these tiny denominations and
right. Yeah. This is how they try to encourage newcomers a lot of the time. Like, don't worry if you don't have a lot of money, you can't buy a whole Bitcoin, but you can stack those sats that they say. the smallest
but it's just,
denomination is like,
it's just I don't find it appealing. Like to think that your
yeah.
€2 could one day become €10. You know what I mean? It's just nothing that exciting in that.
Yeah, I mean, I
Well,
guess the point.
theoretically, though, that depends on when you would have gotten it.
I mean,
Yeah,
certainly
now it's hard to say,
you
but a
could
couple
be a
years ago, you
millionaire
could actually make lots
from
and lots of money from
yeah, but
very little.
even Doge, if you had invested a few euros in Doge, you could have a lot of money off that in the tens of thousands at least. I can't remember the exact figures. So yeah, it's a case of knowing which one again.
Yeah, but what I think is interesting to note maybe is that Sats is a reference to Satoshi. So
The creator, right?
Yeah, this mythical creator of Bitcoin. It was like supposed to like pay homage to him, making the smallest unit a Satoshi or a Sat.
Okay, so this one.
So
This is an
means
anti-fiat.
It's playing on antagonism between the Fed and blockchain, maybe because it's fiat that the guy's going that he's trying to like furiously make more fiat.
Yeah.
So is it playing on like American government kind of disliking crypto?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I don't know if this is the whole meme, right? Or is there?
I don't think. Well, it's just. I don't know. How did this meme start? I know this kind of whole money printer go brr thing is a big thing. But this isn't much of it as we're seeing now. Yeah, but I don't know how this meme started and this is all of it or not.
I think. I mean, there are like hundreds of different variations of this meme.
Yeah.
I think it's just a general, I guess, libertarian or conservative type of viewpoint on the Federal Reserve, even whether or not cryptocurrency existed. I mean, I'm pretty sure this same critique probably would have still been made anyways. I think just because of the rise of cryptocurrency and like this narrative and criticism of the Federal Reserve causing inflation is why this has become probably just a whole lot more popular. I mean, just a lot more people are thinking about it.
Yeah, this already was the critique. So when I made that joke about Ron Paul earlier, for non-US listeners, Ron Paul is a right-wing, politician in the US. His son is as well, and basically was the face of the American Libertarian Party for quite some time, whose like biggest attracting points was talking about how bad the Federal Reserve is and the return to the gold standard. So you definitely saw a lot of that crowd attracted to cryptocurrencies when they first arrived. But yeah, it is almost. I mean, it's the same thing. They're just now they have the ability to say, well, here, this is a way to avoid that. If you don't like the Fed, if you believed this documentary that I sent you, then you should probably buy crypto.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I'm not saying the Fed is good either, but I'm.
It's an extremely shallow critique. That's with libertarian ideology. They are just looking at the kiddie pool of critique compared to like they don't go any deeper.
In this one though, it seems to be kind of making fun of the I guess we'll call them the Reddit crypto bro. Saying that they're in it for the technology while they're obviously, stacking, collecting wealth and like probably cashing in on it.
Yeah. I mean, and this is a real guy apparently who did have a gold shirt, but he ended up being killed for some reason. It's a real
probably for having a gold shirt.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah, it's quite possible for his gratuitous display of wealth. So one way or the other, that probably finished him off. But I read it. I was looking this up the other day and read that. Well, this is the thing, because there's so many applications of blockchain that aren't Bitcoin. That if you're a real tech kind of geek, you wouldn't maybe, be that into Bitcoin. You might be doing something else with blockchain, I guess. I mean, it does say something that nearly anyone talking about blockchain is talking about crypto. And just hoping they can make money off it.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's Yeah, it's sort of like I don't know, I think sometimes these type of guys, like, they think of themselves as like the techie because maybe they're like into video games and sort of into computers, and maybe they help their parents with their computer around the house, or like their grandparents. So they think of themselves as like, technologically quite literate, and maybe they came across Bitcoin quite early. But yeah, it's sort of, if you were maybe to push some of them a little bit more, it's probably quite likely that they were in it more for the more for the gains than they were for the actual technology that they say that they understand, which they may or may not understand. They at least, they more likely just understand the narrative around Bitcoin, and that's sort of what sold them.
I was muted. Sorry, I'm moving quite fast now through these. Okay, yeah. So that's just Dogecoin going down, and then people using memes to try and pump it back up or protect it. And memes have been very good at raising the price of Dogecoin. There and Musk, whenever Musk mentioned Dogecoin on Twitter, he was able to rise the price at a particular point. When it was kind of rising very fast. I suppose it's the same thing. I mean, effectively, Musk mentioning Dogecoin is a meme, or his tweet then becomes a meme. But we kind of talked about Dogecoin, so there's not. I think we kind of pretty much covered this.
But this one, I just thought I liked it because I thought it was funny, because I think it related to our conversation a bit when you were on my podcast, how memes sort of mask particular intentions, and it, as a way, it's sort of like it serves as a shield in certain contexts. Like, I think Elon Musk uses memes to shield himself from like this image of being like a quite disgusting billionaire. He uses the memes as, and like humor is used as a weapon to sort of make you think about something else, or like, and I think it's similar to how Dogecoin is just if you go to any of their communities, it's just a barrage of memes to hide from the fact that it is worthless.
But there is something disturbing about Musk, and this thing about going to Mars, because that's what happens when you can't make profit in your own country. You need to because you can't force the price of labor down anymore. You need to go somewhere else and find new laborers. Not that he's going to find any on Mars, but if you could take people over there and maybe treat them differently to, you could maybe contravene labor laws. I mean, he has joked about that. Or I think Grimes joked about she would happily work there as a slave.
Well, beyond jokes, Elon Musk has it in his contracts that anyone doing any work with him in any of his Mars contracts has to recognize that Mars has sovereign, that anybody on Mars will not be under the sovereignty of other nations' laws, that Mars will create its own laws. So it's he's definitely setting that up, that anyone that works with him has to recognize Mars as a sovereign entity that will create its own laws, which is actually directly against international space laws too. But for some reason, no one's brought attention or called him out on that. Like, governing
everyone
body
thinks that he's talking nonsense, or he's just messing around until it happens.
Yeah, but people are signing contracts.
But people, sure, yeah. Well, that's true. That shouldn't be allowed. But I don't know. People aren't going to challenge him at this point. Maybe it gets too late. Maybe it'll get too late in the end. I don't know. I mean, there's all kind of bizarre shit. I mean, Trump should never have been president, but that happened. So I don't know. I mean, I'm a little bit concerned about Musk. I don't trust him a lot. This is Dogecoin again.
Yeah, it's just like
discuss this. Yeah. I mean, this is
just a culmination of different of memes.
Yeah, this is quite common as well. I mean, I've seen this a few places. Yeah, so it's
I'm
just
sure you can buy this as an NFT as well.
Doge.
Absolutely, somewhere there.
Well, yeah, I wonder how that works. Though. I mean, who claims the meme as an NFT?
Whoever is the first person to upload it, if there's no copyright existing on it, from what I understand.
But then you would have to it's only going to work if collectors really buy into the fact that you're somebody, you know.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. That like for NFTs, there is no, like, the actual image itself, there isn't much of a claim to it. Like the claim is more like I think of it more as like you are basically able to sign your name into like the book of history, which links to that particular image, like with some
Right.
sort of link.
Yeah, or in many cases, people just make, they make their own images and make it in,
Right, but the image
they're
still isn't
artists already, and they
technically
make an
sold.
image and they make it into an NFT. It's just another way for an artist to store their work and prove its provenance. Because you get people like Damien Hirst buying into this now, and he's gonna make, or he's already made a series of like, I don't know, I think it was thousands of them. I don't know if they'll go initially for an affordable price. But many people are jumping on the bandwagon. I kind of, out of principle, don't want to do it, but I don't sell artworks anyway. I only I like the idea of just making memes and not owning them,
Yeah. I mean, there has been one of the interesting
going the
cases,
opposite direction. Yeah.
Most just to mention an example that I find quite interesting in terms of like meme history is, the like crazy girlfriend meme,
Yes.
like the
The
girl with
overly
like the really
attached
big
girlfriend.
eyes. She sold, I think, that picture of herself as an NFT and made a ton of money. I think it was like 10 ether or something like that, or maybe more. I can't remember. But
You mean 10 Ethereum? But is that
yeah,
that much money?
it
It's
would
like,
be at least 20,000.
yeah, okay, but but going on the standards of some of the other recent sales, not a load, but yeah, decent amount.
It could have been more. I'm not 100%
Yeah.
sure. I just saw it pass by on like my Twitter feed, but she has like this whole history of this meme and her life. Like, I didn't realize this, but actually she like tried to be on YouTube, and like she did all these other things I had no
She
idea
was a
about.
YouTuber, yeah. She was already a YouTuber, but that gives the potential for all of them to do it. Like Bad Luck Brian could do it.
Yeah.
Scumbag Steve, all of them. Yeah.
There was the Nyan Cat. Whoever made the Nyan Cat sold it as an NFT.
Yeah.
So I think there is something important for a collector to want to spend that much money if it's
if
really
it's
from
like the original person, but there's a bit like somebody famous selling whatever piece of paper they signed or something they owned.
It's like an autographed. Maybe it's like an autographed
existed.
copy of the image.
Yeah, but she could have printed it and autographed it anyway, or if it had been like a Polaroid, she could have sold it. But in terms of being an artist who sells for a lot, the collector's going to want to know who you are and why they should buy your NFT. I don't know how many people are becoming big artists from NFTs alone. That might start to happen, but it's going to rely on the existing network of people who say this artist is valid, i.e. collectors, critics, etc. So for now, it's not changing anything really.
There definitely are some people that seem to primarily make digital art, primarily make NFT art, even, that are kind of big in that field alone and gaining notoriety. I am constantly asked, like, people send me Instagram message. I say constantly. It's happened probably about once a month over the last year. People asking me if I have any stuff for sale on NFT, and I actually did, but I did it in a weird way. I sold a bunch of artwork for just actual US dollars to someone for them to put it up on NFT because they were trying to start like an NFT gallery. And I found it, that was the first time I had ever heard of it. And I found it kind of strange, the whole concept, because as Mike alluded to earlier, like this idea of limiting or owning a piece of digital arts just seemed wrong to me, coming from the history of an artist that is a socialist and trying to see this stuff proliferated and making art accessible to people. I just thought the idea of owning a digital image seemed dumb to me on the surface.
Well, that is the whole thing, yeah.
Yeah,
but that's what it's what we're not doing, precisely what we're not doing. I mean, if you want to do one, then do it. But I just think, with myself as well, it's like if it's kind of opposite to what you're kind of putting forward politically, why would you do it? And there is that argument, well, then you would have the money and then you could do good stuff with the money. But I don't really buy that entirely. I think if you're just doing what every bloody capitalist is doing, then you're just being a capitalist, no?
We're being more. I mean,
I'm not against selling work as such. Yeah, but I know how the system kind of works, having worked in the art world for years. So in terms of like doing it from the angle of being in the art world and doing it, I just know how much that's like a really shitty system that depends on connections and mostly favors people who already have money in their family or background. So I don't really fancy going down that route. I mean, if somebody suddenly wanted to just give me a load of money for me to make NFTs out of my memes, I suppose it would be wise. Why not have a bit of money? But I'm not certainly into promoting that or choosing it as a lifestyle, because I don't know how much money is going to do for me. I've had more money than I have now at times in my life. It doesn't change an awful lot. You know what I mean? I think fundamentally there has to be some of that in the kind of like the socialist message, not like, yeah, I don't fundamentally believe that we all need loads of money, but hey, I really like loads of money anyway. How does that work?
I think it's a difficult line to walk on. It's yeah, I mean, it's sort of, to me, it's like it's this ultimate problem of like, the guy, the peasant walking around and the guy jumping out of the well, like, oh, you criticize society, but you take part in it.
Yeah, I do get that to some degree. But I think I kind of mentioned this on Twitter the other day, but with the average global salary being incredibly now about $10,000 US, it's like, I suppose you've got to think about this idea of, as Marx says, from each according to their ability to each according to their need. Okay, i.e., so you want to run a society in which people give according to their ability and receive according to their need. And then if you think, okay, I'm a writer, what do I actually need to function on? I don't really need much more than the global average. So if I'm not asking much more than global average, I'm not really part of the problem. You see what I mean? I mean, I'm not saying I only want 10,000 a year. I'm not even on that little. I would not like to be, but I don't need to be on much more than that. I don't need to be on 5 times or 8 times more than that. You know what I mean? I mean, I have had fun being on like 4 or 5 times that for in 1 year, but it's not necessary. I just wonder like how much we should be thinking about, putting your money where your mouth is, so to speak, or practicing what you preach or something, because it just seems so much like there's so many like, yeah, I'm a leftist, but I wouldn't mind a load of money anyway. Ha ha ha. I mean, how does that really further the cause?
Yeah, I think there is, I think, a case to be made where if you did not have to toil away, 40 plus hours a week, then you would have more time to put into the revolution or something like that.
I mean, it's tricky. To be honest,
but
I would never. I wouldn't want 10,000 or 15,000 or 20 for a 40-hour week. That would be that. I mean, that's the thing. Probably, yeah. In reality, I am a freelancer who can do okay from part-time work. I'm privileged by now, although I've had some really crappy years over. I've worked like every possible, supermarket and even grave digger and a number of things, factory as well, processing chicken. I've done all these things for years. But yeah, I suppose I'm not really. Yeah, okay. I suppose the only way it's going to work for you is like one way or the other. It's like you work a 40-hour week and get a decent amount of money that pays you back for your time, or you can somehow get by with some part-time work, earning you enough to kind of do your own work in the rest of the time. So yeah, I'm not like getting 10,000 for a 40-hour week in South America or China or something. So
yeah, I think a problem with maybe this type of analysis is that just the obvious that 10,000 in one country is like, nothing in another country just based on living costs. So it's like using the units.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the global average.
more
What
helpful.
surprised me about that? What surprised me about that though is that the average now is approaching 10,000 in China. That's what's so crazy. But of course, that's based on a very big middle class and a few very rich people, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know how that is allowed in a communist country, not nominally a communist country, but yeah, that's not to say that everyone's on that much money. A lot of people are probably on 1,000 or less. Fair enough. But I'm just thinking that, to just take the average as a kind of indication and just to kind of say that, if it's literally from each according to their ability to each according to their need, more people maybe could be thinking about literally what do I need to do what I want? Because a writer needs a lot less than somebody who makes big art installations or sculptures, for example. So I don't think one needs to compare themselves so much with, if you're a painter, comparing yourself with a sculptor. It's more like, do you have enough to do what you want to do? We're getting on a tangent, but I just think crypto is taking us taking the left so far from this discussion, because it's such a thing of like, maybe I can get myself out of this hole by just investing some money on crypto, but that's in no way a strategy for the left. It's very individualist.
Yeah, and that's a great segue into this meme that we're looking at right now with Bernie Sanders. All I want is to become financially independent within 3 months by hodling a small amount of crypto and checking its value before minutes. I mean, I think we looked at this one on my podcast as well before, but I think there is something like quite powerful about the man who wants to sort of bring back any semblance of social democracy in America, like any sort of like social safety nets, and like, all the different public programs that used to exist more better working. Like the fact that he lost and is now in this like, this jacket and these mittens waiting on watching Joe Biden get put into the office. Like, I think for a lot of young people, I think it feels like it's not going to be possible to get out of the grind without any, because we don't have any social safety nets in America, and therefore, like, we need to invest in risky markets in order to get lucky, and maybe one day I'll be able to retire or like just not have to work all the time.
I mean, that is pretty much exactly what I was saying. Yeah. In a roundabout way. Yeah. I don't know what Adam thinks, because you look perplexed or you didn't agree. I don't know. Or
I got a lot to say, but I don't think we have time for all of it. I don't think it's necessarily about the individual to each according their ability, to each according, like, I don't know. I don't read that the same way, and I don't think there's necessarily a moral like lifestyle thing there. I think it's much more relational, and I think the goal would be to create like what people need more socially, and so I don't think you have to live in like, I don't socialism isn't going to be everyone being equally poor in a ideal vision. Like, we'd want
no, but that's kind of,
luxurious...
that's what I mean, from each according to their ability to each according to their needs, is that you all have different. But if you're a writer, you don't need that much money, because you only need a computer, and you don't need a very big house to write, because most of what's happening is happening in your head.
Well, yeah, but that's the description of communism, and you wouldn't need money at all. Like, so I don't think that it's referring to money. So I was just trying to wrap my head around trying to refer that back to like money and crypto. I don't know. I think I see what you're saying, but I don't know.
But communism works on a wealth redistribution, so it would be a different thing altogether. But what I mean is, the best preparation for communism isn't to like be saying, yeah, I don't really believe everyone needs loads of money, but I like loads of money anyway. I don't think, I don't know how that's like a really good sign.
I think maybe a slight, what I would say is that I don't think everybody is necessarily trying to become a billionaire out of it. Like I think I think we're thinking about it too much of the extreme. Like the meme is like, let's get our Lambos, right? Like we want to go to the moon and get our Lambos. Like I don't think we should take that meme literally at all. I think Lambo is just a symbol. It's like ridiculousness is a symbol of like what you would be able to do whenever your specific individual needs, whatever your Lambo is met. So like if you go through different cryptocurrency communities, I mean, you'll see people being like, sorry guys, I just sold all of my cryptocurrency. I've bought my Lambo, and it's like a down payment on a house, or it's like, I just paid off all of my student loan debt. Like
I think that's totally realistic, and I wouldn't mind a similar thing happening in my in my life. If I got a few thousand to put on deposit on a house or buy a house, that would be great. But I wasn't really thinking about that. I suppose my argument was an extension from talking about NFTs and what kind of like industry you want to be part of.
Maybe one interesting thing I think about NFTs that hasn't been talked about a lot in the left, and it's not like a particularly necessarily socialist thing or not, but with an NFT, you can program it so that each time the NFT trades hands, a part of that trade goes to the original artist as a commission. So I think that's a very interesting difference compared to at least the traditional art world, where like it leaves it's completely away from the artist after that. So now you can automate these type of payments. So then now your art also becomes potentially, I don't know about an investment vehicle or like a type of pension. Like, it becomes something where you as an artist, maybe sometime way down the line, all of a sudden something that you sold a while back just traded hands with someone else for a bunch of money, and now you like receive something in your wallet because it was traded. So you still have like, there's still a connection between you and your art that you created. So that it's sort of reduces maybe the alienation that's in the art world at the moment in some sort of way. I don't really know, but there's something interesting with that, I think.
I do think that's an interesting application.
Yeah, there definitely are applications like that. But let's maybe go through 3 more because we don't have much time. So here's one. So basically, it's just talking about this thing of Bitcoin's a bubble, or it's in a bubble, but each time the bubble's getting bigger. So at one point, it's like a bubble that's been blown, in this way that one blows bubbles. Then it's a balloon, then it's a hot air balloon, and then it's like a house. Some kind of futuristic eco house. So
it looks like it's a habitable zone in an apocalypse, like in a catastrophe, like the other person.
Oh yeah, well that's true. There's
like it's awful.
There's something burning down over there, but this is kind of the world now. I mean, so basically it's saying that the bubble gets bigger and that it's a bubble, but it may be. I guess maybe they're saying it's worth investing. What is happening here? I don't know.
There isn't much happening here. This is just so who you're looking at right now, that's Vitalik Buterin. He is the founder of the Ethereum blockchain. He created it after he dropped out of college in Canada and made it. I mean, he was like the classic like college dropout tech boy wonder story. But he actually, so he was very young when he made it, and he actually got money from the Peter Thiel Foundation when he was very young, and that's how he had the money to do it. He got like some scholarship, and in order to get it, he also had to drop out of school, and then he had to focus on making the Ethereum blockchain. But yeah, he's like, a young, dorky looking guy who wears like memes on t-shirts that he wears to like very big conferences. This is a TechCrunch conference. TechCrunch is like a really big technology magazine. But yeah, he wears like unicorns, like this llama unicorn with like a cat with glasses and like a UFO and a rainbow. There's something like with the Silicon Valley type of culture, there was like a bit of a cultural shift like there's a classic, like I go to work at Google and I wear a t-shirt, flip-flops and shorts. Like I'm not like one of those suits, about working at a tech company now. But like now it's sort of morphed into like I wear memes on my shirts when I go to work, and I'm the founder of like this multi-billion-dollar blockchain network that people use. So I thought it was just interesting how deeply rooted like internet memes and internet culture is, even like in the people who are at the highest levels of blockchain world.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so this is something completely different. So it's Elon Musk riding a Doge, and we talked about.
So this is a
Musk.
Beeple piece. You know, Beeple is a guy who
yes,
sold
people who sold for like tens of millions.
69 million, I think.
Wow.
Nice.
But yeah, so this I think this was a piece maybe afterwards. But like this is the type of shit that's being sold for a shit ton of money in these NFT marketplaces. It is essentially just crypto memes. It is just like high-end luxury crypto memes that people are selling for a shit ton of money, especially Beeple. I mean, Beeple I think he will say himself that he's like not a great artist, like from a, thinking perspective. I don't know what you call it, but he makes these like sort of very memey type of weird, surreal type of art pieces. If you look at other ones, he has like Buzz Lightyear with tits and like, there's like a lot of weird stuff.
So did you say what NFE means? Did I miss that bit, or did you not?
NFT?
NFE. It says on the trophy, it says NFE. I didn't know if you'd interpreted that already.
Non-fungible Elon, maybe?
Okay, so it's not something that maybe it's not important.
Well, what's interesting about this for a Beeple piece is it's extremely optimistic and bright looking, whereas most of his stuff is like these, like you were saying, hellish, surreal things. And another interesting note too about Beeple, which just blew my mind, was not this last year, but the year before. He was actually one of the people that was designed the Super Bowl halftime show. So he's already working in that area of mass spectacle, even though he has this artwork that would seem to criticize that kind of stuff. I don't know. I never know how to read people. I find them very strange, entrancing, but strange.
I think he would agree if you ever listened to him talk.
Yeah, I've never listened to him talk. That's yeah.
Let's just finish up with this. Let's finish up with this quickly. So it's it's quite a common meme format. So it's Trad Girl and this Swedish guy. If I got it right, I don't remember if he's Swedish or not, but this bearded, he's definitely Nordic Wojak guy. So it's her, and she's saying, I think we should buy a house, and he says, sound like a solid investment, and that's basically somebody's parents. The parents of our generation, or the parents of Zoomers, maybe. And then it's like me now, and you say, I just bought magic internet coins from half my salary, and he's actually not talking to anybody, so maybe he hasn't got a girlfriend even. This is basically where we're at, I guess. So it's true. It's like there's quite probably, common people maybe don't even have the money for a house, and they take some of their salary and put it in Bitcoin. Obviously not something that could have been foreseen 25 years ago or whatever, a couple of decades ago.
Yeah. I mean, it criticizes, of course, or at least takes note that it was, in hypothetically our parents' generation, they were able to buy a house at our age, and like now at our age, like it's simply not possible to do, and so we're just gambling it on some internet.
That is a problem, yeah, and that is very appealing. The idea that you could maybe like make enough for a deposit, because that seems plausible to a lot of people, I would guess. I mean, there's also getting enough to buy a house. I don't know if I muted Adam or he muted himself. Okay. He's unmuted. Enough to buy a house. But in many countries, buying a house just seems implausible as the outcome of an investment. in crypto unless you were heavily invested, or you had a lot of money in, or you really knew what you were doing. But getting that 10, 20,000, whatever to get a deposit seems maybe plausible to some people, and I can see the appeal totally. And I do clarify, it's not really, I wasn't really saying people shouldn't take advantage of this possibility. It's just not an answer for everyone. But my point more was just that the way that NFTs might change the art world, and maybe this isn't a way of thinking about your craft as an artist, as a means to make that quick buck through NFT, because it's not going to work for everyone by any means.
Yeah. You still need the network as an artist, for sure.
Yeah. But
you need the network, and you need the network and a lot and some luck, I guess, in many cases.
And if you make maybe crypto memes, it might be easier, to be honest.
Yeah, you probably could make crypto related stuff and just sell that a lot easier than trying to sell more actual artwork or whatever. But what I wanted to ask about, which was probably the biggest looming question I think anybody on the left is going to have about cryptocurrency, which is kind of highlighted by NFTs, is the extreme use of resources that they take up. I've seen solutions to this, they were saying the average NFT uses the same amount of electricity as a household in the EU does for 1 month, that's a lot. And as they grow, they could possibly use a lot more, depending, the size of them and everything. And there seems to be a couple solutions to this. The big one being to have stacks instead of proofs, where you're not requiring as much computing process and hence less electricity and etc. to authenticate these, but that takes away from the decentralized aspects that is so appealing of blockchain technology. So I was just curious if you had any comments on that. Beyond us, developing green energy, is there solutions to this, or do we just hope that we get green energy and it somehow becomes efficient?
So there is the flaw with that type of I think that comparison. The thinking right now is that when you make an NFT, then carbon is produced somewhere into the world, as if you're clicking a button and you're killing a whale or something like that. It's not whenever you are making when you make any transaction or any sort of if you use any transaction on a blockchain network, in particularly we're talking about Ethereum, because that's the one where most NFTs are done. It doesn't create carbon emissions. What is making the carbon emissions is not the transactions at all. It is the process of mining, right? So the process of mining is what's making the carbon emissions. No matter how many transactions are done, it's going to be the same amount of carbon. So it's not like a per transaction carbon emittance. I mean, there is, of course, a little bit by clicking the button on your computer and all that stuff. But the vast majority of what we're talking about is actually done because of securing the network. So this is through a process called proof of work. So this is what's called a consensus mechanism. And what the consensus mechanism is doing is it's basically trying to get all of the different computers in a network to agree on a single piece of truth, right? And the way it does that under proof of work, which is basically the system that derived from Bitcoin, is through the expenditure of a lot of energy. You're using a lot of energy because you're securing the network through a competition. This competition is a very difficult mathematical problem where the only thing you can do to solve that problem is guess. So you just keep guessing different numbers. And if you guess the right number, then you will mine the block and you will get a reward for mining the block. That's why you want to be a miner, right? You get rewarded for it. So making a transaction, whether or not you make an NFT, it's going to be the same carbon emissions, no matter what, or I mean, more or less. Like there's very, very little influence on your one transaction compared to the like all of the transactions that are happening. Like your transaction is going to have very little effect.
So are you saying that then that argument is kind of like reducing it to consumer choice, like by saying, well, you
Yes.
could okay.
Absolutely. Yes. This is my problem with that critique, because it's reducing it to like a consumer choice, like as if like it becomes like an individualistic moral like weight on you that you need to do. You need to not make any NFTs, make any transactions, or do anything with it. Almost like you should not like, take an airplane to go see, like to go on vacation, or like, go see your parents or something like that. Because like airplanes are bad. Like the carbon emission is going to happen either way. So that's my critique on like, that's my critique of that critique. But what I'll also say, just to give more context to people, the problem with energy consumption has been known for a very long time. Since near the beginning, the people who were making this stuff knew about it, and they knew that like if this were to get very popular, then like we're basically creating a like a Cold War scenario type of thing, where everyone is just trying to like one up each other, like an arms race of more and more energy expenditure because of the nature of proof of work. So in the roadmap for Ethereum, where the vast majority of NFTs are being made, there's already been a plan to transition away from proof of work into a different consensus mechanism called proof of stake. So this is a different type of mechanism to get all of the computers to agree on the single source of truth through a different mechanism, not using energy. Basically, you basically prove yourself by staking a certain amount of the native cryptocurrency, so Ether in Ethereum's case. This has already been on the roadmap for a long time. There are other people who have criticized that, oh, it's been on the roadmap for a really long time. Like, why hasn't it been done already? Keep in mind that it's like all of this is like very experimental, like type of work, and it's also it's actually like technically quite very difficult to do it in a safe way. So that's why it's taken so much time, but they've made a lot of progress. Like already today, half or like a big chunk of like what needs to be done for proof of stake is already up and running. So like you can already become like a staker. So in proof of work, you have miners, but in proof of stake, you have stakers. So already today, you can become a staker on the Ethereum protocol. It hasn't fully transitioned to proof of stake. That's why it's still using quite a bit of energy. But the plan is to do it by either to do it in 1 year. So they're not like, they don't have like a set date. The reason that they don't have a set date is actually because there's a lot of politics involved with this. Because if you are currently an Ethereum miner right now, you don't want Ethereum to move to proof of stake, right? Because you benefit from the situation of being a miner. So then there's a lot of like they could probably do with a lot of really good Marxist analysis, because there are like different classes within this network, right? You have miners, who is like a class with a particular class interest in the Ethereum network, and then you have like everybody else who is not a miner, who has their own class interest in relationship to the Ethereum network. So there is a bit of politics playing around there, but like Vitalik Buterin, who is the founder of the whole thing and like is really like the benevolent dictator of the Ethereum network, is very explicit that they're moving to proof of stake.
Okay,
and that's
and
happening. So that reduces,
proof of stake
yes,
reduce the decentralization?
It people will say yes. I think there's a lot of like, you can have a lot of arguments about whether it does or whether it does not. I would argue that proof of work is actually quite centralized in a certain sense, in that it's centralized. Like only people who have the money to buy all of this equipment are able to do it, and like expend all of this energy are able to become a miner nowadays. Now with proof of stake, to become a staker, like an independent staker, you have to have 32 Ether. So 32 Ether at the moment is quite expensive. So like it's difficult to do. However, there are what's called staking pools. So you can stake your ether with a bunch of other people so that you reach 32, and then you can like secure the network. And by securing the network, you also get rewards. So you're getting rewards and you're not spending any energy, or you're spending the equivalent of energy as basically running a computer at your house. So it reduces what they calculate. It's reducing energy consumption on the Ethereum network by like 99.6% or something like that. Like it's a huge thing because it's a really big decrease. That being said, this is not the case with Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't have a very coherent roadmap or plan for basically anything. So like the problem that Bitcoin is suffering at the moment, I think is partially, I mean, it's there's a lot of politics involved where certain people think that Bitcoin should do this or that so that it can scale as a form of digital cash. However, the narrative around Bitcoin has been for a long time now that it's actually more like a digital gold. So it's a store of value. And that digital gold like isn't necessarily meant to be spent like you would spend cash. It's meant to be very, very secure. Like that's the whole the comparison to gold is that like, you know, when we were on the gold standard, we were more secure with our money, or sort of the monetary system was more secure. But really, it was just like, you know, there are certain there is less influence that the government had over the monetary supply, maybe. So with Bitcoin, I think Bitcoin, it still is a problem. It still is like a pretty big problem. I think Bitcoin is like suffering just from like not having any sort of vision for anything. And it basically is largely a speculative asset. And Ethereum is a lot more interesting because it has a lot more functionality. Bitcoin doesn't have smart contracts. Ethereum does. And Ethereum is moving to proof of stake. So like there's a lot more of a vision. And then just maybe one more thing to add is that there are also already other blockchain networks that are on proof of stake or on other consensus mechanisms that don't use as much energy, in which, like, if you are listening and you want to consider making an NFT as an artist, but you don't want to use, you know, Ethereum or Bitcoin because they use a lot of energy, there are other blockchain networks that you can use that use a fraction of the energy cost, like Tezos. Tezos is one that's already on proof of stake, and you can do NFTs.
Okay, great. Well, good that there's some strategies for cutting emissions, but let's finish up there. Or rather, would you want to say one more thing? Blockchain Socialist. Do you want to leave us with maybe just one, maybe something you've been thinking of, something you're researching, something with regard to the left that you would like to kind of, or maybe something that's coming up on your show?
I mean, I would say like one of the things that I think that the left maybe in general that I would recommend is to have the ability to keep contradictions in your head at the same time, like to be able to think um, one thing, but also maybe act in a way that you like, to be aware that you cannot act in complete compliance with like maybe all of your ethical or moral values just because of like, you know, the situation that you're in. And like, you know, you can have two contradictory thoughts in your head at the same time, and they may not make sense at the moment, but after some like, if you're able to chew on those thoughts a little bit, especially when I think it's really important when you're thinking about blockchain and cryptocurrency, you have to sort of keep these contradictory thoughts into your head. And like over time, I think it begins to make more sense. Just because it's a quite difficult topic to understand already, just from a technical point of view. It's quite difficult. So to add on the politics on top of like this quite complex technical infrastructure is like not an easy task. And I think because it's not an easy task is why generally the left has been quite dismissive of it, is because you have to understand quite a bit technologically in order to get your head around it on like what is it trying to do and what is the purpose. and then you can start applying like a political framework on top of that as well. So
I think that's fair enough, but I don't know if I entirely agree, because I just think that the problems with crypto, where it's not, where blockchain can't be deployed as we want, is basically because crypto is functioning within a capitalist society. But beyond that, it's just within a society as such, a human society as such, because of the way we think that we're not up to the ethical systems that we hold up as being like desirable. So I would say that there's this great potential, but it's not going to be realized until we basically rewire how we think and how we do things, which may be kind of a pipe dream, but it's still worth it all the same. You know what I mean? It's still worth trying.
That's sort of like what I'm saying.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
I think that's sort of the points that I'm trying to make. Yeah.
Yeah.
That it's going to take, like, at the moment, when you look at the facade, like if you look at the outsides and the gates of the cryptocurrency and blockchain world, it looks like proto-fascistic libertarian Mad Max nightmare to maybe a lot of people who are already like very deeply rooted in like left-wing political culture and communities. Like I will like you have to walk through a wall of shit in order to be able to like, you have to get past that wall of shit, which is just like this libertarian veneer, before you're able to come to any conclusions. It's just how it is at the moment, because there are so few people on the left who are in the space. So at the moment, I'm trying to help like reduce the amount of pain you have to go through when you're trying to learn about these communities, by doing the blogs that I do and the podcasts that I do, just so as like a way for people to be able to do their homework on it without needing to go through the wall of shit so much. And so that's sort of what I'm trying to provide. Like I'm walking through the shit for you so that you don't have to do it so much, because it's pretty annoying and it sucks sometimes to do it, and it's quite time consuming. So that's sort of like the point of my platform and like what I'm trying to do. And I think you don't have to agree with 100% with everything all the time, but at the very least, I think it's important to.
I'm not sure if I disagree, but I just wonder. It's an argument that comes up a lot. That's all. That maybe we need to hold two things in mind at once, whilst we position ourselves better for the world that we want to see.
Exactly.
But I just don't know if that is the best attitude. I mean, I know it's like really corny and overused, but like this thing of being the change you want to see, that's also valid, so
I don't think those are contradictory things to do, though.
Yeah, maybe they're not. Maybe it's just it's a wider argument that comes up a lot on the left, and it is a question of how one phrases it. So I can see where you're coming from is maybe the same as what I'm saying, but I don't know that there's like a suitable way of saying it so that everyone can be happy at once. It's kind of an aesthetic choice as to how one expresses these things. It's very tricky. Yeah, it's kind of, we get into a whole new territory. So yeah, I mean, I fundamentally I see what you're doing, and I think it's great what you're doing. And I think you're someone I would go to try and work this stuff out again and again. And everyone should have a listen to the Blockchain Socialist. And I hope we can find like good applications for this stuff in the future.
Yeah, definitely. If people want to listen, they can check out the podcast or the blog. If you just look up the Blockchain Socialist, it's it's the first one. The site has a bunch of blogs and podcasts you can listen to. And yeah, on the side, I'm also working on some projects with some people in the sort of crypto leftist community, so like other programmers and people who work in the as programmers in the blockchain space. And we're working on a couple of projects to sort of bring a more clear vision for the left in terms of experimenting with this technology and like what are the potentials that we can do with it. So yeah, you can definitely be on the lookout for for announcements like that.
Okay, that sounds great. Yeah, thank you for coming. That's been really a good, a good chat. I think that our listeners will really benefit from. Our listeners, viewers will really benefit from. Adam, any final word?
No, I appreciate it, and yeah, like I said, I like your podcast quite a bit. You have some good interviews, and you have the chats on there. Like just a blockchain 101 is really good. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing some of your side projects and what comes of them.